Renowned Italian vocalist and tenor Andrea Bocelli is well known. He has sold over 90 million records globally and has 3 of the best-selling albums. His name has been exclusively associated with music for the most of his career. People listen to him sing, and that was that. However, Bocelli has just lately begun to garner attention, and not in the way you might expect. What is happening with Andrea Bocelli, then, and why is he making headlines all of a sudden? Come along as we go over every detail. Music was conquered by the blind genius Andrea Bocelli. Alejandro and Eddie Bocelli welcomed Andrea Bocelli into the world on September 22, 1958. He did not choose the complication that came with his existence from the beginning. His vision was affected from birth due to congenital glaucoma. His mother was encouraged by doctors not to carry the pregnancy to term. She declined. Bocelli would later claim the choice influenced his adamant anti-abortion stance. It wasn't politics to him. It was intimate. He was raised on his family's farm in the Tuscanian village of La Sturza, which is close to Lahatico. About 40 kilometers south of Pisa, it was a serene location, music, where the land was the center of existence. The Bocelli family produced wine and sold farm equipment. Amid fields, tools, and the daily grind of rural life, Andrea grew up next to music, his younger brother Alberto. His early years had nothing to do with sold-out arenas or international platforms. Music came early, almost without conscious thought. Music, his mother subsequently remembered that the only thing that could soothe him was music. He started taking piano lessons at the age of 6. Curiosity quickly took over. He started with the flute and progressed to the drums, guitar, saxophone, trumpet, and trombone. It wasn't a pastime to play music. It was his way of seeing the world. His nanny, Oriana, gave him a Franco Corelli record, which marked a turning point in his life. He was stopped in his tracks by that sound. The notion of becoming a tenor gained traction from that point on. At 7 years old, Bocelli was already able to identify well-known voices and attempted to mimic the great singers he heard through music. He paid great attention, learning the wording and tone in a way that would come naturally to him later. Everything altered once more at the age of 12. During a game, a football hit him in the eye, causing irreparable injury. In a final attempt to preserve his vision, doctors used leeches, a procedure that now seems almost surreal. Bocelli lost all vision as a result of its failure. He was not slowed down by his blindness. He kept playing the piano and learned himself how to read music in Braille. His refusal to relinquish the physical passions, music, that had always been a part of him was equally startling. He continued to ride his bike. He continued to ride horses. In retrospect, he characterized himself as brave, attracted to danger, and unaffected by his blindness. He talked about not wanting to be sheltered, appreciating independence, and loving speed. Feeling liberated, challenging boundaries, and riding alone. He never lost that spirit. Music, he continued to sing as well. Bocelli used to perform whenever he could as a kid. In a little community close to his house, he gave his first concert. When he performed O Salimo at the Margherita d'Aro in Vario at the age of 14, he won his first song competition. Although it was a small victory, it was significant. It validated an instinct he had long harbored. Bocelli opted for a pragmatic approach despite the increasing allure of music. After completing his secondary education in 1980, he enrolled in the University of Pisa to pursue a legal education. He sung evenings in piano bars to make ends meet. His music expenses were covered by those cramped, poorly lighted rooms, which also helped him hone his voice and subtly boost his self-esteem. Additionally, in 1987, he met Enrica, who would go on to become his first wife. After earning his law degree, he worked as a court-appointed attorney for a year. His life appeared to be steady, honorable, and predictable on paper. However, the music's hold never wavered. It was patient and waiting, music, sure that eventually he would pay attention. And everything changed when he did. The ascent to musical fame of Andrea Bocelli. The year 1992 marked a significant turning point for Bocelli. It also didn't make a big splash, like many of the pivotal events in his life. It started with a recording intended for someone else. Zucchero, an Italian rock musician, wanted a tenor voice for a demo tape while he was working on the song Misery. Luciano Pavarotti was supposed to be the recipient of the recording, but Bocelli was subtly introduced as a stand-in. Everyone was taken aback by the response when Pavarotti heard the tape. He asked Zucchero to retain the unidentified singer rather than intervening himself. Furthermore, he demanded that Bocelli record the tune. No plan could have altered Bocelli's life's course the way it did. Miser easily swept throughout Europe after its release. It sounded natural and unforced. It sounded like a home. When Belli accompanied Zucchero on a European tour in 1993, that trait persisted. He was no longer concealed on those stages. Audiences saw him go from duet to solo parts night after night, singing Nessun Dorma by himself. The response was clear-cut and instantaneous. This voice wasn't new. This was being there. Around this time, Caterina Caselli heard Belli perform at Zucchero's birthday celebration. The scene was casual, almost unintentional. It didn't have an effect. Bocelli's career took a significant turn when he signed with Sugar Music in Milan shortly after. By December, he was competing in the newcomers category at the Sanremo Music Festival. He left with the highest scores ever recorded in that segment after performing Miser. A few days later, he entered a whole new realm as he made his classical debut at Reggio Emilia's Teatro Rollo Valley. It was a smooth transition, as though he had always been there. Bocelli made a comeback to Sanremo in the main competition at the beginning of 1994. He set a new record by winning again while singing Music, Il Colmo di Essere. The song served as the basis for his debut album, which came out in April of that year. It rose to platinum status and the Italian top 10 in a matter of weeks. Although success arrived swiftly, it didn't feel hurried. Every step appeared to flow from the previous one. Bocelli expanded his fan base without sacrificing his uniqueness that year by going on tour with pop singer Gerardina Trovato. He stood next to Pavarotti at the yearly Pavarotti International Charity Concert in Modena in September. Music. He performed a duet with the man who had initially believed in him while singing Mattinata. He soon made his stage debut as Macduff in Verdi's Macbeth at Teatro Verdi in Pisa. At this point, an internal change occurred. After identifying as an agnostic for a long time, Bocelli found himself lured back to the Catholic music faith. His extensive reading of Leo Tolstoy's works contributed by providing clarity rather than assurance. His performance of Adeste Fidele in front of Pope John Paul II at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, which was not presented as a message, made that comeback evident. It was just a reflection of his position. The next year saw an event that at first glance seemed insignificant. In 1995, Bocelli made a comeback to Sanremo with a song titled Canti Partiro. He came in fourth. No headline, no award. However, the song's melody persisted. It went beyond Italy, beyond the festival, and into unexpected places. Featured on his subsequent year's second album. It finally became the best-selling single in Belgium's history after becoming a success there. Bocelli completely embraced his classical origins with his 1996 CD, Veggio Italiano. Another chain reaction was triggered by a random event that same year. Sarah Brightman, an English singer, was eating at a restaurant when she heard Canti Partiro playing. Soon after, she went in search of him. Together, they reworked the song into a duet called Time to Say Goodbye. It was recorded with the London Symphony Orchestra and played as boxer Henry Mask's Goodbye. What came next was a first. The song spent 14 weeks at the top of the German charts after its debut. The sales reached the millions. The record accomplished more than just breaking records. It broadened Bocelli's appeal beyond any particular market or genre. He was no longer merely a crossover appealing Italian singer. His voice was universal. Though everything was still under control, the momentum persisted. Instead of positioning himself to follow trends, Bocelli recorded Vivo Pearl in a variety of languages, allowing it to evolve organically. J. Purell and Helen Segar's recording became a #1 hit in France. Every partnership seemed rooted, selected more for the music's ability to connect than for its visibility. Bocelli was playing all throughout Europe by 1997, including a number of outdoor shows in Germany. He performed in the Piazza dei Cavalieri in Pisa, which turned into a night in Tuscany. He was originally introduced to American television viewers when it aired on PBS. He was not marketed as a spectacle by the performance. Viewers were drawn into his world. Then came recognition, but it never seemed to guide him. Quietly, awards were incorporated into an already hectic agenda. Back in Italy, he performed at a World Hunger benefit performance in Vatican City and sang music at the International Eucharistic Congress in Bologna. These appearances were significant because of what they stood for, not because of who was present. Bocelli took on one of the most difficult parts in opera in 1998 when he played Rodolfo in La Bohème. The performance was not presented as a test of crossover. It was handled like what it was, a singer playing the part with restraint and conviction. Soon after, he released his album Aria, which further solidified his dedication to opera. Without ever altering his demeanor or style, he performed in the United States for the first time that year at the Kennedy Center in Washington, visited the White House, and won numerous international honors. In Labo, he portrayed Rodolfo. He put forth records with a strong operatic foundation. He never expressed regret for either aspect of his work while standing at ease next to pop musicians and orchestras. Both public recognition and personal loss occurred in the early 2000s. He recorded religious music, traveled the world, and kept coming back to pieces that required concentration and patience. Bocelli dedicated performances to his father after his death in early 2000, including a concert at the Statue of Liberty, music that, despite its size, felt incredibly intimate. He sung sono with purpose rather than drama during the last encore. Consistency characterized the years that followed. Music, without apologies or justification, Bocelli shifted between stadiums and opera theaters. He went back to Verdi, produced complete opera recordings, and, music, kept working with musicians of all genres. His tone grew older. His options became very limited. He seems more concerned with depth than with demonstrating range. Over time, Bocelli evolved from a fixture seeking relevance to a presence, music, at global occasions. He returned to well-known stages, sang at international ceremonies, and gradually incorporated his kids into his musical life. These partnerships felt natural, based more on family than branding. In 2020, the streets were deserted, churches were shuttered, Italy was under lockdown, and the world went silent. Bocelli sung while standing by himself in Milan's cathedral on Easter Sunday. The pews were empty. The last note was met with no applause. From home, millions watched. The performance struck a chord because it captured the moment precisely, not because it was polished. Bocelli has continued to use music to commemorate the passing of time in the years since. He has put forth albums that are influenced by introspection and religion. He has given performances at historic anniversaries, national festivals, and royal occasions. He made a comeback to La Hatico in 2024 for a run of shows commemorating his career's 30th anniversary. Voices from several genres and generations were represented in the performances. The center, however, did not change. Bocelli has never pursued noise despite everything. He has trusted that the proper voice would always be found at the right moments and has let music develop at its own pace. The scandals surrounding Andrea Bocelli. Andrea Bocelli has maintained something uncommon in the realm of international celebrity for the majority of his career. An almost scandal-free name. But it doesn't mean he didn't encounter controversy. Music, when it did occur, the moments were short, complicated, and frequently influenced more by the public's response than by his own actions. In 2016, during a political era when neutrality was scarce, the first serious brush occurred. Rumors started to circulate that Bocelli might play at Donald Trump's inauguration as the U.S. president. There was an instant online response to the reports. Supporters resisted forcefully. There was a lot of disappointment, criticism, and calls for a boycott of his music on social media. A potential performance became a public test of values as the pressure quickly increased. Trump was having trouble getting big artists for the event at the time. A lot of performers seemed hesitant to be associated with a presidency that had already caused controversy. However, Bocelli was drawn into that tension. If he desired to be or not. Trump reportedly personally asked Bocelli to participate in the inauguration after he performed at Madison Square Garden. Trump has long admired Bocelli, according to people familiar with the matter, who also mentioned that the singer had previously performed at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. On the surface of its music, the offer was one of familiarity rather than doctrine. The response, however, came quickly. Music supporters claimed that even if no support was intended, performing at the inauguration would indicate support. The boycott-calling hashtag became popular. Days later, the discourse changed from one of expectation to one of animosity. According to reports, Bocelli took a back seat behind the scenes. According to an unnamed source, he declined the invitation because he was feeling overpowered by the response and was getting too much heat. According to a different report, Trump himself told Bocelli not to move further because he was worried that the singer's relationship with his fans would suffer needless harm. The result was the same in either case. Bocelli didn't play. Neither Bocelli's indignation nor his forceful declaration was noteworthy. He didn't say much in public. As the moment went by, music served as a reminder that stillness can also serve as a means of self-preservation. Not because the song lacked passion, but rather because Bocelli did not support it, the debate swiftly subsided. His name reappeared 3 years later. This time, it was connected to a much more delicate music discussion. There were more than 20 women who accused Spanish opera singer Plácido Domingo of sexual misconduct in 2019. The allegations detailed a decades-long history of improper conduct. The consequences were immediate. Domingo resigned from his position as head of the Los Angeles Opera and stopped performing music in the United States. Music institutions disassociated themselves. In real time, reputations were re-evaluated. But decided to participate in an Associated Press interview. He defended Domingo by challenging the use of moral judgment rather than downplaying the gravity of the accusations. Bocelli conveyed his surprise at the fate of a fellow artist he greatly respected through a translator. He claimed that Domingo, himself, and other players in the field were all uncomfortable because of the circumstances. He sparked a panic that reverberated outside of opera. He was concerned by the notion that an accusation alone could terminate a career overnight before any legal resolution. He envisioned a situation in which doors would close, stages would vanish, and alliances would dissolve the moment someone accused him of wrongdoing from years before. Bocelli thought that was a ridiculous possibility. He made a clear distinction between art and morality. He stated that Domingo's artistic status should not be determined by the accusations until he was found guilty of a crime. He said that his moral judgment would shift if he were found guilty. But music and his creative judgment would stay apart. He maintained that there are many artists in history who had imperfect personal lives yet whose creations persisted on their own. He believed that conscience and courts, music, were the proper places for moral judgment. He claimed that art lived somewhere else. There was a mixed reaction. His remarks were viewed by some as calm and philosophical. They were perceived by others as diminishing the voices of others who had come forward. The important thing was that Bocelli didn't try to position himself as a provocateur or a victim. Knowing full well that not everyone would like the role, he spoke bluntly. Citing the lack of fresh legal rulings, European organizations, such as the Salzburg Festival, continued to collaborate with Domingo. Bocelli's comments became a part of the larger discussion about power, responsibility, and legacy as the gap between public opinion and institutional response grew. Music. What is notable in both music instances is restraint rather than disagreement. Per se, Bocelli did not create importance by indignation. He didn't change his image with music. He had poor posture. When pressure increased, he took a step back and spoke when he thought that remaining silent would imply agreement, music, with something he did not entirely support. That strategy has amazingly stabilized his public life. Though not often for misbehavior, disorder, or behavior, his name does occasionally make news. Rather, it emerges when the world attempts to situate him inside discussions that go beyond music. By most accounts, music, is still an artist who has achieved success without accumulating scandal. Controversy tends to speak more about the moment than the guy when it passes, music, him. His professional and personal lives were molded by the same clarity, perseverance, and focus. He handled concerns of the heart with the same care and attention that he used to handle the pressures of the public. Veronica and Andrea Bocelli's love story started with a song. Veronica Berti Bocelli and her husband Andrea Bocelli know what it takes to keep a relationship going. However, their narrative didn't start out that way. Chance was the first. Andrea had been married to Enria Cenzati prior to Veronica. They got married in June 1992 and had two boys, Matteo in 1997 and Amos in 1995, while he was performing at piano bars early in his career. In 2002, their marriage came to an end. Bocelli, however, continued to be quite active in their lives and maintained a close and consistent relationship with his sons. In 2002, Andrea met Veronica for the first time on a soggy evening at a party. She had not planned to go, and she was 18. However, events led her to an empty room where she sat beside a piano and spoke to fill the quiet. When O'Kelly heard her singing, he was completely stopped. He invited a friend to accompany him, and when they got together, they had a smooth chat. They connected right away as they talked about life and music. Her voice and presence captivated Andrea, music, and they became so close that they moved in together that same music evening. Andrea felt that their 25-year age difference had never been a barrier, pointing out that such differences were typical in his family and frequently made relationships easier rather than music more difficult. Before formally tying the knot in 2014, the couple took their time and spent over 10 years creating their life together. After years of referring to each other as companions, a term that, music, now seemed commonplace, Veronica considered the shift and said that being married felt weird, whereas being a wife conveyed permanence and significance. After Virginia, their daughter, was born in 2012, their bond grew even stronger. She sang on the holiday record A Family Christmas with her father and older brother, Matteo, and was surrounded by music growing up. Virginia attributed her early musical development to her father, who taught her how to use her voice. Virginia's singing, according to Andrea, was angelic, and the family frequently got together for musical moments, fusing everyday living with creative cooperation. In March 2014, Virginia's music second birthday, Andrea and Veronica were married in a small ceremony at the Montenero Sanctuary in Lavoro, Italy. Only close friends and relatives were there, and the gathering was quiet. Andrea opted for a blue Cornellani suit, while Veronica donned a white silk gown designed by Mano Servino, her black hair falling in free curls. The wedding was as simple as the life they had created. Thoughtful, thorough, and completely disclosed. Their relationship has always revolved on music. The duo brought harmony into their personal and professional lives by recording duets, music, such as Something Stupid in Italian and subsequently Cheek to Cheek. Veronica sang alongside Virginia and opened the performance as a family in Andrea's 2024 Christmas special, Christmas with Andrea Bocelli and Friends, highlighting their mutual love of music and one another. Music, outside of the stage, Andrea has talked about the characteristics that keep their partnership strong. He underlined the need of harmony, chemistry, and understanding between people. He thinks a physical connection is essential. When intimacy opens doors to something lovely, fascinating, and vibrant, a connection flourishes. Without it, love runs the risk of becoming routine or static. Both as a family and as partners, they live their lives according to these values. Villa Alpomar, their residence in Tuscany, exemplifies this concept. In the late 1990s, Andrea bought the pink mansion by the sea and renovated it from its former use as a hotel. He saw it as a sophisticated yet modest area big enough to live, work, create music, and entertain guests. The top floor is set aside for the family's private rooms, while the other floors are used for entertaining visitors and housing his personal music studio. Andrea believes that the finest vacations are spent with loved ones and close friends surrounded by music, and she finds the most comfort and happiness within these confines. Veronica is more than just a mother and a partner. In addition to producing his live specials and documentaries, such as The Journey, she oversees Andrea's career and acts as vice chair of the Andrea Bocelli Foundation. Through projects, tours, and performances, she has mentored and assisted him. providing both practical and emotional support. The tour, an Andrea Bocelli music special, and a movie that followed the pair as they rode around Italy in 2023 gave audiences a glimpse into their lives. They made stops along the way to perform alongside musicians including Torrin Wells and Tori Kelly. Andrea's wish to travel freely during the COVID-19 pandemic gave rise to the idea for the trip. Veronica accepted the task despite her lack of writing expertise. Instead of habit, common intention defines Andrea's relationship with Veronica. Because both couples consciously choose to be committed in one another, striking a balance between commitment and personal independence, their relationship flourishes. Each member contributes to daily life and music, and the family stays close. Their relationship has remained strong throughout, driven by a love of music, a shared passion, and mutual trust. Andrea and Veronica's relationship, which began with a fortuitous meeting in a quiet room and lasted for decades, is a wonderful example of perseverance, commitment, and purposeful love. From their first encounter to marriage, kids, and creative cooperation, every decision demonstrates a mutual appreciation of connection, trust, and the delight of creating a life together. Their world still revolves around music, family, and partnership. An example of a love that has persevered, changed, and grown throughout time. But much as music treasures these intimate moments, Andrea's life continues on the international scene, and the tenor doesn't appear to be slowing down anytime soon. Andrea Bocelli's most recent news is making waves. Andrea Bocelli, 67, is back in the spotlight, and this time it's for one of the largest sporting events. On December 5, the Italian tenor will be the main attraction at the John Music F for the 2026 FIFA World Cup final draw. Actress Nicole Scherzinger, international music sensation Robbie Williams, and disco legends Village People will join Bocelli on stage at the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. Heidi Klum, Kevin Hart, and Danny Ramirez will serve as co-hosts and serve as the event's hosts. The occasion is a perfect fit for Bocelli. Having played at the Celebrate Africa concert in Johannesburg just days before the 2010 World Cup final, he has long been a fixture at international events. His voice, which is well known and adored all over the world, has the ability to make any performance feel both personal and significant. There is more to the final draw than just music. With the United States serving as the primary host and Canada and Mexico serving as co-hosts, it will disclose the group stage pairings for the inaugural 2018 World Cup. Sports legends Tom Brady, Shaquille O'Neal, Wayne Gretzky, and Aaron Judge will serve as draw assistants, and former England captain Rio Ferdinand will lead the draw alongside award-winning announcer Samantha Johnson. The red carpet will be hosted by Eli Manning. Belly's presence adds a certain gravitas that comes only from decades of performing at the most prominent stages in the world, even in a lineup full of international luminaries. Artistry and consistency have been the cornerstones of Belly's career. He has sold more than 75 million copies globally, published 15 studio albums, and played in some of the most famous locations, including Madison Square Garden and the Vatican. His projected $100 million net worth for 2025 includes revenue from commercial agreements, streaming events, opera performances, tours, and records. However, his ability to transform a performance into a communal experience, music, commanding attention without ever having to shout, is what really makes him stand out, not the numbers. Bocelli's presence serves as a reminder to the globe why he is still important across generations and genres as fans await the final draw. His voice has an undeniable authority, a serene energy that can transform a single moment into something eternal, whether it is being used on opera stages or at international gatherings. Music, fans will see that unique talent once more when he takes the stage at the FIFA World Cup. A show that promises to combine sport, music, and the universal human emotion. What do you think of Andrea Bocelli's performance during the FIFA draw? Tell us in the comments section below. Remember to subscribe, like, and share. Click the following video that appears on your screen as well. You'll like it.